I was on the original board of directors after it had disappeared for a number of years and then came back. But it wasn't the Jemison Festival at that time. Jemison came on, I think, the next year as the principal sponsor. Or maybe they were there from the beginning. I'm not quite sure about that. But it was a smaller event. I suppose it had the fact that Michael Dwyer was championing it at the time gave it tremendous kudos and access, and the fact that it was city centre and all of that, like Savoy red carpet type events. But it was also they already had their dry run in previous years because the event had happened previously, so it wasn't like they were entirely reinventing the wheel. I'm not suggesting that you're doing that out here either, because what I've seen of the festival here so far is fantastic, and like the crowd at Sean Penn's film last night was wonderful to see, and the reception for it, and the interview today, the group that I'm working with today are fantastic, and the whole experience is very good. We've an extraordinary ability to delude ourselves into believing that stories that we think are great. The number of guys that come up to me in pubs, and I live down the country, and come up and say, I have a great idea for a film, and it's like, it's never going to happen. It's very hard to get them to realise that, to understand that film, unless you're Steven Spielberg, works through character rather than through the actual story. It's always the engagement with the audience. Invariably, is through a character arc or a series of character arcs and interconnecting character arcs. So you need to hone your critical skills, and there are very good programmes available, both in colleges. Screen Training Ireland from time to time would organise stuff, Film Base would organise stuff from time to time. That will help you specifically to hone those kind of critical skills, so that when you read the script you can actually say, have a sense of whether it has a chance to get off the ground or not. Probably much more than I would out of doing a production now at this stage. I suppose there's a sense where you get to a certain time in your life where every production is different, but there's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of things, particularly some of the more problematic aspects of production. You don't want to go through that again and again and again. It's, particularly on the fundraising aspect of it, it's become so much more difficult to do that. And you kind of, I suppose there's some sort of masochism that keeps you going over the years, that you keep going back for more, and then you wake up one morning and said, I actually probably don't want to do too much of that anymore. But the things that probably interest me more now at this stage of my life would be producing a smaller budget film would appeal to me. Not a micro budget, but more like the kind of thing we did with My Left Foot. I haven't enjoyed the experience of working on the larger budget films so much, because I think the level of nonsense and interference and unnecessary noise that's created around those films is not sort of good for your spirit. So teaching is something I would love to do more of. And when we were talking about contingency earlier, please, the tendency would be to try and blow your contingency during the shoot, because that's the big maw that needs feeding all the time. Try to reserve some of it for post, because you will need it. And money you spend in post really is seen on the screen. A lot of money you spend during the shoot ends up on the cutting room floor, but what you do in post almost certainly will influence very directly what's actually going to be in the finished film. So at this stage of the process, previewing makes sense. If you show your film to a bunch of people, even though it won't have music and effects, you can put some temporary music on it, but it won't have effects tracks, so it'll be rough. But people can adapt to that, and if 30 or 40 or 50% of people who are looking at your film have the same problem with it, you'd be very foolish not to look at it very carefully and ask why. Amazed how many directors here won't do that. Who say it's my art, not changing anything.
When you're organising that focus group at this level, will it just be people involved in the production? Or?
It might be initially, but Jim would bring 10 friends into the Avid room and just sit them down at night, and
people you know. Yeah.
People you know, but people who aren't going to bullshit you either, who are going to sort of. Well, I think they're hugely important, because I think what's happened in the mainstream, as happens always in the mainstream, is that the common denominator will dictate what happens, and I think what we're seeing in most of the malls at the moment are a lot of just. People are paying to go to them, but I think there's a whole area of audience that's been disenfranchised. And I think there's an enormous scope. In a way, you only have to see the way in which the Lighthouse has been supported in the past, and I'm sure will be in the future. The Irish Film Institute, the Film Centre programmes are doing extraordinarily well. The Screen Cinema is still programming a lot of art house film. So and there was a very interesting article last week, I think it was in the Financial Times, that reported on recent research in America, said that the only significant growth area, and it's a substantial growth area in terms of the market for cinema, is what they call the silver audience. They're older people who have money, and so going out isn't a problem for them, but they also have discernment, and they want a richer experience than the mainstream is actually offering. So I think the kind of work that film festivals offer is the opportunity to experience the work of other film cultures is absolutely fantastic. So I have no doubt that there is a bright future for them.